The thing that almost always happens is they have this long to-do list, and I say, all right, here's what I want you to do. Take everything on this to-do list with the dates that you think they'll get done by, which is usually this week or next week, and I want you to just put them on your calendar with the amount of time you think it's going to take, and then we'll have another follow-up call next week, and we'll see what happens. And then we have the call, and then they say, this process doesn't work. I say, why is that? So, well, I tried to move it over there, but there isn't enough space in my week to fit all these items. It's like, yes, that's the
point of the exercise.
The point of the exercise is there literally is not enough time. Your time is finite, and the number of digital items you can add to a to-do list is infinite. You are working with the wrong constraint, which is like the amount of items you can fit in a database row, as opposed to the number of things that you can fit in your finite time of your calendar. And so we then work on, all right, you probably need Slack during the course of the day. Usually like 50% is a good target because things come up.
Oh, I see. Not the tool Slack, but
space, extra space. You need extra space in the day. And so we work on things like, for me, I process a lot of email. I probably do.
And when you say you need space in the day, could you just briefly say more about that? Because the way I'm hearing that is that you have 50% of your time open, but I'm not sure if, now is that, for instance, like tomorrow you would have 50% of your time open, or does that mean that in advance of scheduling other things, like 3 weeks from now, each day is 50% open?
It's generally 50% open just fully.
Got it. Okay.
And as you get better at it, I would say I'm probably at 25% open because I've been doing this for many years, at least 5 years, probably longer, to the point where I can estimate how long it will take me to do something with maybe 90% accuracy. It's like, I need to write a memo on this thing. It's going to take me 3.5 hours. And I just know, because I've written so many of these, I just know how long it's going to take.
Right. Takes time to hone that, I would think, right? If you ask most people, like, how many calories do you eat at lunch? They'll be like, 6,000 million? I don't know.
That's right.
7 calories? But then over time, you can calibrate. Okay.
Especially if you retroactively update your calendar as well, which is, how long did it actually take me? And when you realize that your estimates were off or they were right, you can start to hone that skill. So I always try to have people put it at 50% open space, because something's going to come up. A friend calls you, something happens during the day, you get a message that kind of throws you off. The problem is that it's way easier to pull something in from tomorrow into today because you had extra space than it is to have this cascading problem of just like disastrous. It's like, then I have to push this to this day. Then the next thing you know, like, you have this Tetris game that you're playing a month out because one thing changed in your schedule, everything breaks. These concepts come from manufacturing, where you have this line, whatever the assembly line is. You need to have slack in the system in order to be able to operate effectively, because something will come up. And if there's one thing that comes up that breaks everything downstream, that's a real problem. And over time, as you get better, you can reduce that amount of slack. But 50% is a pretty good goal. So you have, like, my goal for today, I'm going to have a 4-hour block where I'm going to do X. And then I have some time. For me, I know I need to process email or communications broadly for at least 2 hours a day. So I just have those blocks every day. They're just repeated. So when I start scheduling things, it's like, well, I can't actually fit this in, because it's not like I can't do my email, because my role requires a lot of email. And so it's just clear as day. I cannot do this on Thursday. I can do it next week.
From a process perspective, then, do you start with, I'm imagining not at this point, but just so I get a really clear understanding. Let's just say you're looking at next week. You have these recurring blocks of email. That's already in there. You may have other repeating blocks, and I would be curious to know what they are. So let's bookmark that. When you're looking at, say, the to-dos that will be converted into calendar or not for the next week, what does that process look like? Do you start with maybe a to-do list, and then that goes to your EA, and he or she tries to slot them in for the anticipated amount of time? Like, what does that look like from kind of start to finish?
The answer is you just skip the to-do list step entirely. So when I get a new task, a lot of my tasks effectively come in through email.
Right.
So I'll get an email. And this is also another thing that I I worked with a couple of people on who really, really struggled with email. And the thing they struggle with is using their email as a to-do list, which is a very common thing that people do. The problem, it creates a lot of anxiety when you have this stack of uncategorized things. It could be 15 minutes, it could be 50 hours. You have no idea until you open up each one individually to figure out how much work it is. And so the same process of translating your to-do list into your calendar, you can do the same thing with email, which is, I worked with somebody recently where I said, all right, let's open each email. How long is this going to take you to respond to? These are like the chunkier ones. It's like 30 minutes. Great. Mark it as done. Copy the link and put that link in your calendar. So you're going to spend this 30-minute block responding to this email. What's the next one? That's going to take me a full hour because I have to write something for them.
That's interesting. So the clearing of the inbox then is really, in some capacity, scheduling the proper amount of time to reply to these things. So you're not looking at this undifferentiated stack of shit that you are opening multiple times, marking as unread, going back to, forgetting what you read, reading it the 17th time, or whatever that might be.
It's a stress thing. Like it is very stressful to have this list of things. It's just an ambiguous amount of effort. It is stress relieving to see, all right, I will do that on Thursday of next week. And I have nothing pending right now. I have not dropped any balls because I know that anything that is time sensitive that needed to be done today is already done. And there's no ambiguous deadlines looming that I'm not aware of because they're in my calendar. And if you change it, this is where closing the loop is a helpful factor, which is if you say, I'm going to block this off for Thursday, you can tell that person, hey, I'll get back to you on Thursday. And then if you have to move it, you now know that you can say, hey, something came up, I'll get it to you on Monday. And you can just keep them in the loop on that as opposed to just ambiguously dropping the ball. So for me, when I get a new task, it just immediately goes into my calendar. So if somebody was to say, hey, can you write a memo on this topic so that this team has context on it of where this has gone over the last year? I'll say, sure. How soon do you need it? I'll say, can you have it to me by Wednesday? I'll go to my calendar and I'll block off 2 hours because I think that's about how long it'll take. I'll block off 2 hours on Tuesday that I have open and I'll say, cool, I'll have it to you by Tuesday night. And then that's it. The calendar is the to-do list.